Right, we are meeting with our third session. Today is one of the important, actually very important one, the risk assessment. Today is the core of the auditing. At the first webinar we discussed the introduction to assurance engagement. Second webinar we discussed the introduction to auditing. Today is the audit planning. It's a core of auditing. So what I request you, so you have to watch at least two to three times this webinar, and also you should try to understand certain practical examples that I'm going to give today to understand the logics of auditing, right? So sometimes you can just memorize the study text, it will temporarily help you, but in long term you have to understand the auditing principle in a practical way. It will help you to get through the examination whatever the scenario is given, as well as it will be one of the good foundation for CL1 Advanced Audit and Assurance, SL1 Advanced Business Reporting, as well as Professional Practice module at Viva stage. So therefore on that perspective or with that objective, so I will try to do the today's session. It's very important for you and not easy, bit difficult, so we'll try to understand. First have a look, we will have a look on the syllabus and how that comes on this session, and then we'll come to the in detailed discussion, right? Okay, so the subject session 3 risk assessment, the standard number is 315. I'll tell you how that comes in the syllabus. Basically this section comes under the part as I explained in the first webinar and the second webinar. So this come under the part D and E. So this is 55% of your syllabus, but today's session comes under the part E, fundamental of audit and assurance. Then if you look at the part E, there are 4 chapters. Number 1, risk assessment, audit planning and documentation, audit evidence and audit procedures, and audit finalization and reporting. So today I am going to discuss the not everything but the important part of the risk assessment in a very systematic way for you to understand, right? So that is our today's discussion, chapter number 12 in the study text. So take the study text in your hand and come to the type of question that would be tested at your examination. This is a this is example for a question. This is taken from pilot paper question number 28. So as you know, so your paper is MCQ based MCQ questions. Basically you need to select the most appropriate answer. The question will be a theoretical question or the question will be a practical question. So you need to, in order to answer, even if it is a theoretical question, even if it is a practical question, so without shortcut you need to learn the subject in a long way, right? So if you look at this question, the procedure that helps the auditor to understand the entity and determine the key areas more susceptible to material misstatement during the audit is known as answer A, substantive procedures, part B, substantive analytical procedures, risk assessment procedures, and audit planning procedures. So after we learn today theory, this is going to be a very simple question for you. This is a theoretical question, right? So now look at here. I'm going to go with the very simple way and very, I don't have any hurry, because if you understand these logics today properly, you will remember till you become a chartered accountant. Not only that, after you becoming a chartered accountant, you will remember these fundamentals, right? So with that in mind, so I'll start in a very basic way. So last 2 discussion we discussed the introduction to assurance engagement. If you can remember the example of characteristic certificate which I explained during the first webinar, and the second webinar I discussed regarding the introduction to auditing, how the auditing flow, it's a practical subject, how auditing is conducted by audit firms in a practical way, what are the applicable auditing standards, which I explained you on a second webinar. So please, if you have not watched the webinar number 1 and 2, please go to the CSE Lanka YouTube channel webinar and look or watch the 2 webinars that I did, and then come to the third webinar. Then you will have a better understanding, right? So before moving to the risk assessment, I will take you through this in a summarized way, right? If you can remember, so I'm not going to discuss the assurance engagement, but I'm again trying to tell you the audit and assurance. So if you can remember, we discussed during the last session, right? So how auditing is conducted, how external auditing is conducted by the audit firm, and how that is going to be applicable in your syllabus. If you can remember, I told you there is a tri-party involvement here. The management will call shareholder and call auditor, right. So, these are the tri-parties involved in the auditing process. Then again I told you the shareholders, who are the people invested the money in the business activities. So, we call ABC Private Limited, if you can remember this example. So, ABC Private Limited. So, ABC Private Limited is a separate business entity. The money or the investment of that company is made by a shareholder. These two parties are two different people. The shareholders do not engage in the business activities. So, the shareholders have appointed an agent, stewardship, right, called management to run the business activities, and end of the day, after you doing your business activities, give me the return for my investment. So, that is what the shareholders' expectation. So, now the company, if it is, shall we say, in this company, rupees will say 50 million. So, 50 million worth of money has been invested by the shareholders. So, at the end of the year, shareholder thinks like this: look here, I have invested 50 million in ABC Private Limited. So, what happened to my money? Whether this 50 million has gone up to 55 million or the 50 million has come down to 45 million, we don't know. Whether my investment is there or not, we don't know. That particular person doesn't know. So, in that circumstances, shareholder wants to know what happened to my business. So, in that case, the management has to communicate what happened to your investment. The communication cannot be made just going to the shareholder: look here shareholder, you gave the 50 million, so this is how in your business, this is 50 million investment, so this is how it's there in the company. Can the management go and tell to the shareholder? It's difficult. So, therefore, there should be a mechanism. So, that mechanism is called the finance statement, which we discussed. Right, finance statement. So, what is the purpose of the finance statement is to communicate to the shareholders the business performance or a financial position of the company, or what is the status of your money invested. That is the purpose, right. But in top of that, that is the accounting that you have learned from A level, but top of that there is a concern. But in this world we cannot trust anybody. Can we believe anybody? So, we cannot believe. So, in that circumstances, the shareholder do not trust the management. The shareholder do not trust the management. In that circumstances, the shareholder thinks, okay, I have given my money to a person to run a business and give me a return. But how can I rely on him? So, it is difficult. So, therefore, what the shareholder does, shareholder goes for a third party person called chartered accountant, right. Look here, I have invested my money in a business called ABC Private Limited, that is run by a person called A, and as a manager, he has given a result of the year-end result or a business performance or the financial position, but I have my doubt. Can you? So, you are an independent person who is acceptable by the management, who is accepted by the management, who is accepted by the shareholder. So, therefore, please go to the company and check the finance statement and give me a report. Can you remember? Right? So, in that circumstances, this chartered accountant has to come and check this finance statement and give a report. So, simply this was called during the previous webinar, we call this is auditing. This is auditing. So, this is called auditing, right? Auditing. So, now, how that audit is to be done? This auditor may be a KPMG or a Creston, may a BDO Partners, or maybe any other firm, or Jassing and Company, or Nialet and Company, any other audit firm in the country, or a big firms, or a smaller firm, or a one individual chartered accountant, or whoever. There should be a methodology of doing. Now, I am audit partner, I can't do the audit as I wish. If you are a practicing chartered accountant, you can't do the audit as you wish. For that, there is a mechanism. That mechanism is documented under Sri Lanka Auditing Standards. Look here, right? SLAU simple is Sri Lanka Auditing Standards, which is a 3 booklets. We have a 2 booklets mainly, so that booklets more than 1000 pages. So that the thing that you have to learn under the BL5 as well as the CL1, right? So last week I explained how this is been done. So basically this verification of financial statements 100% cannot be done. That you agree with me. So we cannot check the 100% financial statement, it is not possible at all. So in such circumstances, we have to do something called reasonable assurance. Reasonable assurance, right? And the last week I told you, the reasonable assurance given, so there are steps, there are steps. Now this, how this audit firm partner or audit firm, how that audit firm should work in giving the report to the shareholders, there is a way of doing. That way of doing is given in the auditing standard. That way is documented in a step manner. So there are steps to do audit. So I am going to tell you again. So what are the key steps? So basically the number 1 key steps here is the main one, right? So this party should agree, especially auditor and the management should agree what is our job role, what we need to do, what is your responsibility, what is my responsibility, what is the framework that we are going to do the audit, when I am going to do the audit, what are the resources I need. So all these need to be agreed first. That is we call agreeing terms. Agreeing terms. Otherwise we call this is letter of engagement, right? This is the main number 1 step in starting up audit, right? So this is given under the standard of 210, right? So that is the main key area that auditor or main or a key step that auditor should do at the beginning of the audit. So once these things are agreed, what is my role, what is your role, what I am going to do, what you are going to do, how you are going to give the information, all these once all these are agreed, now so everything is agreed, so now auditor has to plan the work, right? So now planning in coming into the place, right? So once everything is agreed, so I am going to plan the work. I am going to plan the work. How that planning is been, how the planning is done, what we are going to discuss today. That is core of the auditing, most difficult area of the auditing. Certain thing cannot understand, will try to understand as far as possible today, right? So the planning basically I'm telling you key steps. So last week I discussed there are 3 things here, right? Understanding the business, right? Then risk assessment, right? Then risk response. So we will discuss in detail these 3 steps today, right? That is our today's topic, right? So after we agree the terms, then we do the planning work, what we need to do, we are going to plan the work. After that, we do the work, that is called audit procedures. That is called audit procedures. We are going to do the work. So that where we have to learn the practical audit procedures. I will explain you later these things, right? Last one is reporting. Once we do everything, we have to give the audit report. right. Actually, if you really look in the summary here, as far as the practical auditing is concerned, this has to be in your mind. There are 4 steps in auditing. There are 4 steps in auditing. Number 1, agreeing the terms. We need to agree the terms between 2 different parties. What we are going to do has to be agreed. Then plan the work. That is that is difficult. Plan the work. Then do the work. Then report. That's it. As far as the auditor, you come to the client, first of all you agree with these people what we are going to do, then we plan what we are going to check, then we are going to do the work, and then we are going to report on that, right. How these 4 steps are done, should be done, are given in the Sri Lanka auditing standards. Basically, these are the applicable standards which I explained you in the last week. Sorry. Right, these are the applicable standards. So from here, if I start, under this paragraph, step 1, you should aware all these standards: 200, 210, 220, 230, 240, 250, 260 and 265. Remember, all these standards are not applicable for your syllabus, but all the key standards are applicable in terms of here 210, 240, 50. So these are applicable for your examination. Then in terms of the planning, so these are the applicable standard: 300, 315, 320, 330, 402 and 450. So these are the applicable standard for the I am telling the entire auditing syllabus or entire auditing process. From there I will tell you what are applicable for you. So it's a very important standard is 315, which we are going to discuss today, right. And then 330 also important, so 320 also not that important, but you should aware. So let's see how we can discuss. Then here all 500 standard: 500, 501, 505, 510, 520, 530, 540, 550, 560, 570, 580, 600, 610 and 620. All these standards are applicable in performing the audit procedures, which I explained you in a briefly in the previous webinar. Then the last one, the standard 700, 701, 705, 706, then 710, 720, 800, 805 and 810. So these are all the auditing standards which are applicable for you in a summarized form, right. But in your syllabus, remember, in your syllabus we discuss all 4 steps. We should discuss all 4 steps, but we are not going to discuss all these standards. When you come to your CL1, Advanced Audit and Assurance, you need to be aware of all these standards, how those are applicable in practical way. But in your syllabus is concerned, so these important standard I have already highlighted here: 210, 250, 240, 315, 320, 330, right. So here as well 500 also certain level important, and then these standards are important for you, and 700, 756, right. So these are going to be very much important standard for you, for your examination is concerned. 210, 240, 250, 315, 320, 330, 500, 550, 560, 570, 580, 700, 705, 706. I am going to discuss with you all these key standard in a little bit in a practical way, rather just memorizing. Remember, in auditing, මේ කටපාඩම් කරලා මතක මේකට ක්‍රම දෙකක් තියෙනවා. එකක් තමයි කටපාඩම් කරන්න පුළුවන්. අනික තමයි logically understand කරගන්න පුළුවන්, right. I always prefer the second one, because you can see your pilot paper. So you might have seen the pilot paper. In your pilot paper you can see there are certain questions, it's not from the study text. You have to think and write, especially when it comes to audit procedures. For example, I will tell you, for now, if I am the auditor, if I want to check the land, what the audit procedure should be performed, I have to check the land deed. But the management comes and says the land deed is not available. What should I do? It's not in the book. It's not in the standard book. It's not in the study text. That type of question that can come in your examination. So therefore, logical way of understanding and the logical way of thinking will help you to get through the examination of BL5 as well as in the next time in the CL1, right? So keep that in mind. So again I am telling you, so these are the auditing process as auditor at audit firm, as auditors, what we do at audit firm also similarly like that. So all these standards are applicable. So in terms of our discussion, so today I am going to discuss this most difficult area, that is audit planning. So look at here. So in this basic diagram, what is most important? 210 and 240. So 240 is a fraud which I will be discussing in another webinar. But 210 I am not going to discuss, but you can read the study text. So the 210 mean what? The 210 mean agreeing the engagement. Remember another one more thing. In this auditing, there is a separate vocabulary inbuilt in the subject. Auditors are using a different language for a certain level. For an audit work, audit project, we call one word called engagement. So this particular audit of HEMAS, audit of would say SLAuS, audit of the CSE Lanka, so audit of Navalok Hospital, we call engagement. That is an engagement. So therefore we call agreeing the terms of the engagement. So agreeing the terms mean these two parties, standard says, these two parties need to agree on what their roles, how we are going to do, what would be the reporting, what is our fees, what is our scope, what is our responsibility. So all those are discussed under this particular agreeing terms. So read the study text where it is given an example for the letter also. Remember the auditor is preparing a letter. After auditor is proposed to conduct that audit, auditor is preparing a letter stating that all these matters, right? What is the auditor's responsibility, scope of the audit, management responsibility, how the planning is done, how the reporting is done, how the fees, what is the fee collection, so what is the regulatory background, how other auditors are going to be used, whether internal auditors are going to be used, and whether the legal right of receiving all the information from the client. All these things should be included in that letter, and that letter is prepared by whom? The letter is prepared by the auditor. The letter is prepared by the auditor and it is sent to the management. Management means top of the management, most probably managing director or the directors, so they will sign the letter, right? Remember carefully, we call letter of engagement. Letter of engagement is prepared by the management and same is signed by the letter of engagement is prepared by the auditor and the same is signed by the management, right? So I am not going to take in the standard in detail, so you can look at the study text. That is not a very difficult standard. So if the time permits, I will see during the next webinars whether I can take it up this standard. It's a small standard. If not, so just go to the study text and read, try to understand that standard. But so therefore here that audit, the fraud I will be discussing in a separate webinar. But my key step, once we agree the terms as auditor and the management, once we agree, now for example, if you go for a company to work as a financial controller, management accountant or account executive or even audit trainee, when you join an audit firm, you will be receiving what? Appointment letter. පත්වීමේ ලිපියක් හම්බෙනවා. ඒ පත්වීමේ ලිපියේ තියෙනවා මොනවද වගේ ඩියුටි එක මොකක්ද කරන්න ඕනේ, මොකක්ද කීයර දෙන්න ඕනේ, රෙසිග්නේෂන් ලෙටර් එක දෙන්න ඕනේ මොකක්ද, that is අපි එකට කියන appointment letter එකක් කියලා. The similarly here we call letter of engagement. Auditor must be appointed and the two parties should agree on a terms. The appointment letter එකක් ඔයාලට දුන්නා නම් කම්පැනි එකේ ඒක මැනේජ්මන්ට් එකෙන් අස්සම් කරලා අන්ත HR ඩිරෙක්ටර් HR මැනේජර් අස්සම් කරලා දෙන්නේ. ඒක කියනවා ඔයාටත් අස්සම් කරලා කොපි එකක් දෙන්න කියලා HR එකට. Why is that? Similar concern. Auditor is preparing the letter and giving to the management, please read this and sign. So when the both parties sign, that becomes an agreement. That is going to be a legal document. So if there is a later problem, if there is a problem come up and somebody goes to the court, that will be the legal document to prove the appointment of the auditors and the both parties' responsibility. Right? I hope that you are clear with these steps now. So today's my discussion is going to come for the audit planning, right? And I am going to discuss in detail of these 3 steps, so which is bit difficult. So I am going to delete this one. I hope that you are clear with my program and the steps of the auditing. So if you have not noted down in the previous webinar, please take a note in this and podi කොලයක ලියලා පාඩම් කරන තැන ගහලා තියාගන්න මේක. So it's important. Until you becoming a chartered accountant, this is important. Some people say auditing is not interesting. Some people say auditing is difficult. Auditing is not difficult. On the matter of, you need to make it interest. මේක හරිය ලස්සනයි. Subject එක හරිය ලස්සනයි. මේ subject එක හරිය logically තේරුම් ගත්තොත් මේක හරිය interesting subject එක. Don't hate this subject. සමහර අය තීරණය මේක අයියෝ මේක මොකද අපි මේ because you have not touched this subject previously. Maybe at A level you have not touched. If you have done AAT sometime and you might have touched for a certain level, but some majority might have not familiar with these words and also therefore they don't like for this subject. But what I want to tell you, whether you like it or not, auditing is the number 1 pillar in your CS syllabus. The becoming a chartered accountant, this is going to be the key pillar. This is going to be one of the key pillar in terms of achieving your ACA goal. So therefore, if you don't like this subject, make it an interest. Make it an interest to learn in a logical way. So note down all these steps and write in a paper and keep in the place where you are studying till you becoming a chartered accountant. Because same thing in a different way or a different practical application, you may have to discuss or learn or write the answers at the examination till you complete the professional practicing module at Viva stage, right? So I am going to delete this one now. Right, look here. Now, so today's topic is risk assessment. I will show you how the risk assessment is getting connected to the auditing process. When you look at the word called risk assessment, avadhanam takseruwa, avadhanam kaddame. What is this? So you may be thinking, what is this? Risk assessment? Now before coming to that, you might have, now these days the COVID-19, sometime this, yesterday also I show in PHI, the president of PHI association, he was telling, rather making lockdowns the entire country or in western province or any other part of the country, he was telling, අපි අවදානම නිවැරදිව හඳුනාගෙන අවදානම කළමනාකරණය කළ යුතුයි කියලා. අපි අවදානම් සහිත ප්‍රදේශ හඳුනාගෙන ඒ අවධානම අඩු වෙන්නට නිවැරදි ක්‍රියාමාර්ග ගත යුතුයි කියලා කිව්වා. What is that? අවදානම හඳුනා ගැනීම. අවදානම හඳුනා ගැනීම. ඒක මොකක්ද? ඒ මොකක්ද? Risk assessment. So take that example COVID-19. Now Colombo city limit is risk is high. අවදානම වැඩි කියලා කියනවා. Similar thing here. Keep that example in your mind, right? Right. So now, what is this risk assessment? Okay, let's try to understand in a very basic example. Our basic diagram. මේ ත්‍රිකෝණය මතක තියෙන්න ඕන කවදා හරි qualified වෙනකන්. This is going to be help you in a big way. Management is in this corner, shareholder is in this corner, and auditor is in this corner. Chartered accountant, right? And chartered accountant comes and check the financial statement, that you know fundamentals of auditing. So that is his role, right? How this person has to be done? is given under Sri Lanka auditing standards. How this person should do the work is given in the Sri Lanka auditing standards, right? What is our ultimate goal? Ultimate goal is to issue a report to the shareholders stating that, right, stating that finance statement prepared by the management are free from material misstatement. If you can remember the first webinar, what is our ultimate goal? Our ultimate goal is to state that the finance statement prepared by the management are free from material misstatement. කළමනාකරණය විසින් පිළිල කරන ද මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශන කට්ටලය ප්‍රමාණාත්මක සාවද්‍ය ප්‍රකාශනයන්ගෙන් තොරයයි මතයක් ප්‍රකාශ කිරීම තමයි අපගේ අවසාන අරමුණ. ඒක තමයි අපේ අවසාන අරමුණ. That is our objective. That is what we are going to achieve. In that achieving, the first task, as I told you, first task is agreeing terms, which we explained in the previous about 5 minutes ago, right? The second task I told you, the key second task is planning. Our key task is planning the work, right? Remember, now when we are on the second step now, what is this planning? What is this audit planning? Now just imagine, now COVID-19 will, let's say, now for a COVID-19 there was a medicine found, let's say there was a medicine found in a USA, and that is readily available. All the Sri Lankans in the country can be given that vaccine or a medicine within 1 hour, within 1 month, to the entire people, Then, do you need a planning? If it is readily available, can be given to everyone at any time, does it require much planning? No. Let's say, if you register for the CA Sri Lanka examination, if you register, you will become a chartered accountant. Let's say, register වෙලා අවුරුදු 3ක් ගියාට පස්සේ නිකම්ම chartered accountant කෙනෙක් වෙනවා. එහෙම හිතමුකෝ. එවනම් මොකුත් කරයිද ඔයාලා? පාඩම් කරයිද මේ වගේ? exam වලට face කරයිද? මේ වගේ webinars අහයිද? මොකුත් කරන්නේ නැහැ. Now you, when the examination is in March or when the examination in July, what you do? You plan the work. You plan your hours, you plan your other activities, you plan your personal life to save the time to the time for studies. You watch webinars, you attend classes, you listen to lecturers, you get some comments from your friends, you write questions, you write mock exams. All these what? The examination month you don't go trips and you don't go for other activities, you try to save the time and reserve the time for studies. What is this? You do a planning for what? To get through the examination. Similarly, if the auditor wants to achieve his objective, what is the auditor's objective? The auditor's objective is to state that the finance statement prepared by the management are free from material misstatement. So, in order to say that, auditor has to plan the work. Look at here. If auditor can check 100% transaction of the finance statement prepared by the management, if the auditor has adequate resources, adequate timing doing that one, no need planning. Let's say, you know the auditing, what happens in audit firm. So, I will take an example we call Navalok Hospital PLC. Navalok Hospital. So, this Navalok Hospital PLC, the financial period is 1st April 2019 to 31/3/2020. let's say this their financial year is this. So under the finance department, so there is a CFO, there is a finance manager, and there is a two accountants come in, group accountant and subsidiary accountant, let's say, and there are, I will say, about 25 account executives, right. Altogether you have a 27 and 29 people in the finance department. So these 29 people throughout the year, out of 365 days, let's say 280 days, because accountant mean you can't just limit your work to the office hours, you have to do Saturday, Sunday and late hours, and there are depending on the works. So let's say out of 365 days, 280 days you have to work in the Navaloka Hospital PLC to prepare the financial statement what is expected by the shareholders. In order to give the finance statement that is required by the shareholder, this management, under the management finance division, 29 people, 280 days, they continuously work and prepare the financial statement for the end of the year and present it to the shareholders. Just see the long process. Now look here in the audit firm, let's say the audit firm called KPMG, let's say like that, KPMG. So the KPMG is the, let's say KPMG is the auditor of Navaloka Hospital PLC. So under the audit engagement, basically you have an engagement partner, then engagement manager or a directors can be there in a certain firms, engagement supervisors or project managers can be there, or executives can be there, different names will be used, but structure is like this. And then engagement senior will be there, audit senior or a senior associate, and there will be other associates or a juniors or associate level 1, 2, 3 like that. In a different audit firm, different words are called. So these people are there for audit. Let's say the KPMG is the auditor of a Navaloka Hospital PLC. After 31st March financial year is ended, right, somewhere in the 15th of April after New Year, 15th of April, right, 4 people, let's say 1 audit senior and 3 audit juniors, like audit trainee is like you. Just imagine you, so you are just doing the business level 2 and you may be going to the audit firm training, or you may not be going, or you may be going in future. Let's say you know level. So 3-4 people like you are going to, under the supervision of audit senior and the manager, you are going to check the work that is done by 30 people, 29 people for 280 days for a bigger work. Well experienced people, their day-to-day life is the hospital business and the system and everything they know. But you guys, 2-3 people with the audit manager support, audit manager doesn't come to the field sometime, audit partner sometime will never come to the field, and audit partner will just ask what is happening, that's it, sometime. Or sometime in between the audit partner may involve different problem, the different problem, but he will not full time involved to that particular audit because he has a lot of audit to be done. So just imagine if the auditor, these people have done a 280 days, but we audit train is going and checking that 30 people work and trying to say everything is perfect. Can you tell? Everything is perfect? You can't say. You cannot say. So since you cannot say, since you cannot check everything, obviously you can't check everything. So since you cannot check everything, you have to check something. There could be problems. Understand? In auditor cannot check everything in the financial statement. Auditor cannot check everything in the financial statement. Therefore, auditor checks problematic areas. Since auditor cannot check everything in the financial statement, auditor checks the problematic areas. So that is what called. But to check the problematic areas, you need to identify what are the problematic areas, right? So therefore, you need to have a little bit of a planning What I am going to check? I can't check 100%. Then what I am going to check should be planned properly, should be identified. So that is the work we are going to do under the planning. I hope that you are clear why the planning is needed in the auditing of financial statement. Since we cannot check the 100% of transaction of the financial statement, so we need, as an auditor, we need to identify අපිට ඔක්කොම check කරන්න බැරි නම් problem cases ටික හරි කරන්න ඕනේ. එබැවින් මේ problem cases ටික identify කරන්න ඕනේ අපි. identify කරන්න නම් අපි මොකක් හරි මේක සැලසුම් කරන්න ඕනේ. මේක සැලසුම් නොකර අපිට මේකට කරන්න බෑ. දැන් COVID-19 ගත්තොත් එහෙම පැන්ඩමික් සිටුේෂන් එක සෞඛ්‍ය අමාත්‍යාංශයෙන් කරන්නේ මොකද්ද? මේක හැමතැනම අවධානමක් තියෙන නිසා they plan the work. Without planning you can't do. So therefore I hope that you are clear. Auditor also needed the planning. That is what we are going to discuss today. Right? I hope that you are clear. Right. So under this planning, remember, in this planning basically we have 3 steps. One more thing I want to highlight when you are learning auditing. So learn in a systematic way. Systematic way mean, so in a proper order and a proper way, and save in the mind in a proper way. So if you are not clear with any of the theoretical point, please pause the video, just go back and try to listen again. Right. Okay. So then under the planning, remember, so this is my main activity, right? Understanding the business, understanding the entity and its environment. Remember, under the audit planning, what is my number 1 activity? Under the audit planning, my number 1 activity, understanding the business. Right? Understanding the business. What is that understanding? You see, you need to have understanding. Why you want an understanding? Look at here. Now, auditor is going to come and check the finance statement prepared by whom? Management. Management is a different business. If you take an example of Navaloka Hospital, right? Let's say Navaloka Hospital. So you need to understand what is Navaloka, when this was incorporated, what their business, and what are their who are their customers, what are their how they are purchasing the material, how they are serving to the patients, how they are making payment to the doctors. You need to understand first before doing anything, because you are a newcomer to the scene, because you are coming as a third party person. If you are to give an opinion on something which is not belongs to you, at least belongs to someone else, you need to have an understanding. Na මම මේකට උදාහරණයක් අද පළවෙනි වීඩියෝ එකේ ගත්තා. දැන් මට කවුරු හරි කෙනෙක් ඇවිල්ලා කියනවා මට චරිත සහතිකයක් දෙන්න කියලා. අපි ඔයාව ගමුක උදාහරණයක් විදිහට සමන්, මිස්ටර් සමන්. හරි සමන් ඇවිල්ලා මට කියනවා සමන්ට මම චරිත සහතිකයක් දෙන්න ඕනේ සමන් කියන ස්ටුඩන්ට්. දැන් මම සමන්ව ජීවිතේට දැකලා නැහැ. අද තමයි දැක්කේ. දැන් මට චරිත සහතිකයක් දෙන්න පුළුවන්ද? මම සමන්ව දන්නේ නැහැ. ඉස්සර වෙලා මම සමන්ව තේරුම් ගන්න ඕනේ. සමන්ව අන්ඩර්ස්ටෑන්ඩ් කරන්න ඕනේ. සමන් කියන්නේ කවුද? සමන් කොහෙද? බෑග්ග්‍රවුන්ඩ් මොකක්ද? I need to understand. I need to associate him to give a character certificate. Similarly, the chartered accountant to give an opinion on the finance statement which is prepared by the management to the shareholder, first of all, the chartered accountant should understand the entity and its environment. The business entity, Navaloka Hospital PLC, the business entity should be understood. What is that business entity? And its environment, the national level environment, macro level, micro level environment should be known by the auditor. So therefore, any chartered accountant who is appointed to conduct the audit of financial statement, number 1 task that we do, now it's a practical world as I am as an audit partner, what I am trying to do, if it is a new audit comes, I am trying to understand what is this business, what they are doing, who are their customers, who are their suppliers, and how was the history, what is the business nature, how will affect the national economy, what are the challenges in future, where it could go wrong, how the employees. I need to understand all this. So that is the number one task, right. So here you need to have three things, right, three things. Number one, so what you are going to understand, right, and how you are going to understand, that you should aware, right, and why you are going to understand. So these three you should know. It's very clearly given in the study text, and also this is applicable standard 315. So also this is very clearly given, right. So now if you look at the first thing, so what we need to understand, basically we need to understand the business nature, we need to understand the business nature, we need to understand the legal environment. So what is the legal background of the company, whether the company is registered under the Companies Act number 7 of 2007, or if it is a company registered under the Inland Revenue Department, or if it is a company registered under the Central Bank of Sri Lanka under the Business Finance Act or a Banking Act, or an insurance company registered under the Insurance Board, or the foreign company which is incorporated in another country and registered as a branch in Sri Lanka. So you need to understand the legal background of the company. So then you will have a better understanding in terms of giving an opinion to the shareholders, business nature, legal environment, accounting framework. That you should aware a little bit. What is accounting framework mean? So in Sri Lanka you may be aware, you may not be aware, just listen carefully. In Sri Lanka, this company has to prepare the financial statement. This finance statement can be prepared on three different financial reporting frameworks. In Sri Lankan companies, there are three accounting standards books, or three types of accounting standards you might have learned in accounting subject. If not, you will be learning in future. So there are three. We call number one, full SLFRS. Basically SLFRS 1 to SLFRS 17 as of now, LKS 1 to LKS 41. So this is applicable for a bigger companies in the country. That is one framework. Another one, second one, SLFRS for SMEs. This is another framework for a second tier companies of the country. So there are middle level companies which are not publicly quoted or not in the international level. Their requirements are less. So therefore there is another set of accounting standard which is applicable for second tier companies. And the third one, SLFRS for small entities. Right, there are three financial reporting framework. Now we need to understand, as auditor you need to understand what type of or what framework that is applied by the management, because this has to be applied by the management. So what is the framework applied, we need to see as an auditor. Right. So likewise there are so many aspects in the study pack given. So what we need to understand. Right. Another thing is internal control of a company, which we will be discussing later. So internal control. So there are a lot to understand. Ownership. Right. Future business plan. What happened in the history. There are a lot to understand. Then how you are going to understand. So basically you can understand in a different way. How you are now, for example, let's say you are audit trained. අපි හිතමුකෝ ඔයා audit training කෙනෙක් විදිහට අලුත් audit එකකට ඔයා audit firm එකකට join වුණා. ඔයා audit එකකට දාලා තියෙනවා. company එක තමයි SLAuS holding. අපි කියමු. දැන් මේ company එකට යන්න කලින් පළවෙනි task එක මොකක්ද ඔයාගේ ඉස්සලා SLAuS holding කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක අවබෝධ කරගන්න ඕනේ. මොකක්ද මේකේ background එක කියලා. So how you can search on that? Simply you go to the website of SLAuS holding. That has everything. Right? Or if not, you go to the client place. When you go to the client place, ask from the management, or meet the CEO or a CFO or the business, whoever the directors or the accountant, ask what are their products and what are their market share, to whom you are selling. So likewise, you can understand a lot, inquiry. And you can observe. You go to the client place and observe what's happening. You can do inspection. You can do analytical procedures, which we'll be discussing, we will discuss later, right? So likewise, we can understand how we are going to understand. So basically, inquiry, right, inquiry, and then inspection can be done, and also we can say another one important thing is analytical review procedures, ARP, which will be discussed later. Another thing is you can look at the social media, that is also the way of understanding, right. So more than that, another one more thing, shall we say, you are the auditor of this particular company in the previous year also. Audit firm is the firm auditor for the previous year also, but the team members have changed. In such circumstances, you can take the previous year working paper file. Previous year working papers you can see, right, previous year working papers. So rather memorizing these things, try to understand in a logical way. And okay, so now what you need to understand, how you are going to understand, and why you want to understand. Why? That you learn at the beginning. Why you want to understand? You want to understand because you cannot check 100%. You cannot check 100%. So therefore you are going to check only the problematic cases or problematic scenarios or problematic areas. So therefore, why you want to understand? To make a proper risk assessment, that I will explain now. To make a proper risk assessment, you need to understand, right. So as a first step, now you should remember, don't try to memorize. කටපාඩම් කරන්න ලෑස්ති වෙන්න එපා කවුරුත්. මේ හිතන්නකෝ දැන් I'll tell in Sinhala. මේ විගණකවරයාව පත් කරන්නේ shareholdersලා පත් කරන විදි ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. ඒක CL1 එකේදී ඉගෙන ගන්න පුළුවන්. විගණකවරයාව shareholdersලා පත් කරාට පස්සේ එයාලගේ අරමුණ තමයි මේ කළමනාකරණය විසින් මේ පිළිල කරන ලද මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශන කට්ටලය ප්‍රමාණාත්මක සාවද්‍ය ප්‍රකාශනයන්ගෙන් තොරයයි මතයක් ප්‍රකාශ කිරීම, right. ඒක තමයි අරමුණ. ඒතර ඒ අරමුණ කරා යන ගමනේදී ඒක කරන්න ඕනේ කොහොමද කියන එක ශ්‍රී ලංකා විගණන ප්‍රමිතීන් 37ක there are 37 auditing standard ඔය 37ක සඳහන් කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒකේ පළවෙනි පියවර තමයි අපි කරන්න යන වැඩේ මොකක්ද කියන එක මේ පාර්ශවයන් දෙක අතර හොඳ එකඟතාවයක් in writing තියෙන්න ඕනේ. කියන්නේ ලිඛිතව තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඒකට අපි කියනවා agreeing terms. එහෙම නැත්නම් අපි appointment letter එකක් අස්සම් කරනවා දෙගොල්ලම. I'm not going to discuss this in detail. I told you to look at the study text on that chapter. If the time permits, I'll come here. Then the second core step is the basically planning. Why the planning has to be done? අයි අපි planning මේකට කරන්න ඕනේ. මොකද මේ auditorට ඇවිල්ලා මේ මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශනවල තියෙන 100%ක් check කරන්න බෑ. මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශනවල තියෙන 100%ක් check කරන්න බැරි නිසා auditor හැම වෙලාවෙම check කරන්නේ problems තියෙන තැන් විතරයි. අන්නේ problems තියෙන තැන් ටික හඳුනාගෙන ඒ ටික check කරන්න. දැන් මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශන කට්ටලයක් ඇතුලේ ගත්තාම ඔයාලා දන්නවා මේක ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා වර්ග තුනක්. If you look at the financial statement, there are three things. Right. One is account balance. Account balances. All the items that are available in the balance sheet or a statement of financial position is called account balances. The example debtors, PP, inventory, all these are account balances. Number two, transactions. Transactions. If you look at the transaction mean, what is all the items that are available in the P&L or income statement called transaction. That is transaction. Ganudenu. So in the example, revenue and would say other one is expenses. Right. And the third one is the disclosures. In the example for disclosures, going concern is a disclosure, subsequent event after the reporting date is a disclosure, depreciation rate is a disclosure, the securities pledged for the bank is a disclosure. So likewise, any financial statement, these three things are there: account balances, transactions and disclosures. There are many: inventory, debtors, creditors, stated capital, so then gratuity, then deferred tax, right? Cash and bank balances, retained profit, dividend payment, reserves. There are many in the balance sheet, many in the P&L, many in the disclosures. So therefore, auditor cannot check all these three things in the financial statement. So therefore, auditor is needed the planning. Why planning is needed? To identify the problematic areas and decide what to be done before doing everything. So now, if the auditor can check everything on the finance statement, if the auditor can check everything in the finance statement, this planning section is not needed. If the auditor can check everything, planning is not needed. But in practical, it cannot be done. It's a post-mortem job. අපි කරන පශ්චාත් මරණ පරීක්ෂණ වගේ වැඩක්. ඇයි මේ මැනේජ්මන්ට් එක අවුරුද්දක් පුරාවට කරපු වැඩ ටික මේ ඔඩිටර් අවුරුද්දෙන් පස්සේ සති දෙකකට අවිලා චෙක් කරලා කියන්න යනවා මේ අවුරුද්දම කරපු ටික හරි කියලා. It's a post-mortem. මරුණට පස්සේ පුද්ගලයෙක් මැරිලා ඉන්නවා නම් ඒ මරුණට පස්සේ අවිල්ලා පරීක්ෂණ කරලා කියනවා මෙන්න මෙහෙම තමයි මරුණේ කියලා. It's all assumption, right? It's not easy. So similar something like that auditing also. Therefore, you cannot check everything. So therefore, the planning is needed. I hope that you are clear with that, right? So when the first step in the planning work is the understanding the business. We need to understand. If you don't understand, you can't do anything. The second thing, the second key steps is risk assessment. Risk assessment. This is bit difficult. Only 3 steps under the planning. This is bit difficult. What is that? Risk assessment. What do you think of that? Risk assessment. Take a 1 minute or take a 30 second and think, what is this risk assessment? You might have heard this word called risk. Okay, I'll take a very basic example. So you need to get a proper understanding on what is this risk. අවධානම කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? Then I hope that some of you might have gone to World's End, ලෝකාන්තේ. දැන් ලෝකාන්තේ ළඟට ගියාම සමහර අයට ලෝකාන්තයට කිලෝමීටර භාගයක් විතර කලින් කකුල් දෙක වෙවුලනවා. සමහර අය ලෝකාන්තේ පේන දුරකට ගිහිල්ලා අයියෝ මට නම් එතනින් එහාට යන්න බෑ කියලා කියනවා. සමහර අය ලෝකාන්තේ ළඟට ගිහිල්ලා කකුලක් පල්ලෙහාට දාලා සෙල්ෆි එකකුත් ගහලා එනවා. You see, different type of people. Now ලෝකාන්තේ දැක්කහම කකුල් දෙක වෙවුලන්නේ ඇයි? පල්ලෙහා දැක්කම අර පල්ලෙහා බලංගොඩ පැත්ත පේනවා. It's a risk. There is a risk. What is risk? What is risk? තව දෙයක් ඕනේ. දැන් පාරේ යනකොට බල්ලෙක් එනවා මේ පාරේ යනකොට බල්ලෙක් එනවා පිටිපස්සෙන්. What you are going to do? You will run. Why you will run? Because there is a risk. What is the risk? There will be some attack from the dog, or you want to escape from that, or you want to go your journey. It's just a risk. Sometimes students say that I am going to apply the 5 subject this time, or a 4 subject. Some of your friends say, don't take a risk, machan. Don't take a risk. තව කෙනෙක් කියනවා මම රිස්ක් එකත් අරන් සබ්ජෙක්ට් 4ම දාලා කොට දානවා මේපා. රිස්ක් එක පොඩ්ඩක් ගන්න ඕනේ. සමහර අය කෙනෙක් රස්සාවෙන් අයින් වෙනකොට කියනවා ඕක අයින් වෙන්න එපා. මේ දවස්වල COVID-19 එකත් නිසා ජොබ් එකක් හොයාගන්න අමාරුයි රිස්ක් එකක් ගන්න එපා කියලා. සමහර කෙනෙක් කියනවා නෑ මම රිස්ක් එකක් අරන් අයින් වෙලා මම මේක හදනවා කියලා. මම බිස්නස් එකක් කරනවා කියලා. So look at here that the risk mean it's everywhere in the world. Forget about auditing, it is in your life. Day-to-day life, each and every part of your life is full of risk. Today we are living, that is also a risk. So simply if you look at the definition of a risk, if there is a barrier if there is a barrier in achieving your goal, if there is a bottleneck in achieving your goal or achieving your fundamental objective of a work is called risk. Right? Having understood that, having kept that in mind, risk means some type of barrier in achieving the goal. It may be an individual or it may be in the company. So now COVID-19 has become a big significant risk for the business activities. For example, hotel business, tourism sector. COVID-19 is a significant risk for them. Transport system, airline companies, those who are migrant workers, it's a risk for them, right? So that we keep that in mind. The risk mean what? මොකක් හරි ප්‍රශ්නයක්. රිස්ක් එක කියලා කියන්නේ තමන්ට තමන්ගේ ගමන නැත්නම් අරමුණ ළඟා කරගන්න බැරි වෙන මොකක් හරි බාධකයකට තමයි අපි අවදානමක් කියලා කියන්නේ. Right? Or something wrong somewhere, that is called risk. It cannot exactly, you cannot say it's wrong. Now today sometime when we are traveling in Colombo, it says travel in Colombo is risk because of COVID-19, some people say. But exactly we cannot say I will get infected, but there is a risk involved. So therefore risk risk is interconnected with the probability. The risk mean some type of probable barrier in achieving your goal, right? So that I told you in a personal life or a normal life to understand about the risk. Now we'll come to the audit of finance statement, right? So now, right, risk assessment. Now we discuss the understanding the entity and its environment, and then the risk assessment. So the risk assessment mean, I explained you what is the risk, but when it come to finance statement, audit of finance statement, risk assessment mean what? Since we cannot check everything in the finance statement, we identify the problematic cases. That identification is called risk assessment. What is that? Since we cannot check everything in the finance statement, we identify the problematic cases or problematic places. That is called risk assessment. Again I am telling, what is, simply understand, what is risk assessment? Since we cannot check everything in the finance statement, we identify the problematic places unchecked. We identify the problematic scenarios or problematic items in the finance statement. That is called risk assessment. I hope that you are clear, right? So since we cannot check, අපිට හැමදේම check කරන්න බැරි නිසා අපි problem තියෙන ප්‍රශ්න ටික විතරක් ප්‍රශ්නගත areas ටික විතරක් හොයාගෙන අපි check කරනවා. Now for example, let's say in Jaffna district, we'll say Jaffna area. කවුරු හරි කියනවා බිම් බෝම්බ මේ Jaffna district එකේම බිම් බෝම්බ තියෙනවා කියලා කියනවා. දැන් හමුදාවට ගිහිල්ලා Jaffna district එකේම තියෙන බිම් බෝම්බ භූමිය check කරන්න බැහැනේ land එක. එතකොට ඒ කියන්නේ මේ වගේ auditor හැමදේම check කරන්න බෑ වගේ එතන ආමික check කරන්න බෑ. එතන ආමික මොකද්ද කරන්නේ? Army using some techniques, they will try to identify where there could be many. එහෙම නැත්නම් ගොඩාක් පින් බෝම්බ තියෙන්න පුළුවන් නැත්නම් possibility එකක් තියෙන ප්‍රදේශ හඳුනා ගැනීමක් කරනවා. ඒ ප්‍රදේශ හඳුනාගෙන ඒ ප්‍රදේශ වලින් ඒවා ඉවත් කිරීමට කටයුතු කරනවා. Similarly, the auditor also, since auditor cannot check everything, audit identify the problematic cases. That identification of problematic cases is called as risk assessment. I hope that you are clear, right? So now I am going to do a small question. So look at this question. So look at the PowerPoint presentation. So look at this example, identifying audit risk, right? Read the question for 1 minute and note down your answer. So I will give you 1 minute. So note down your answer and then we will discuss. The question is, XYZ Co has significant plant and machinery which it used to make its product. During the year, the efficiency of the company's machinery was improved significantly. This was because a comprehensive review of each piece of machinery was undertaken and an assessment was made as to whether a minor repair, extensive refurbishment or a complete replacement was needed. XYZ then took the appropriate action in each case and spent a total of rupees 150 million in doing so. Identify the audit risk in this scenario. So take a 1 minute time, read the question. So identify the problematic case or a problem in this case. That problem is called audit risk. Take 1 minute and do that. Right. So if you read the question, XYZ Co has significant plant and machinery which it used to make its product. During the year, the efficiency of the company's machinery was improved significantly. So that means the company's machineries are not at efficient stage. The company's machineries are not in that much of workable condition. This was because a comprehensive review of each piece of machinery was undertaken and an assessment was made as to whether a minor repair, extensive refurbishment or a complete replacement was needed. XYZ then took the appropriate action in each case and they spent a total of rupees 150 million in doing so. Look at here. So look here. So now when you read this case scenario, what has happened? So in the company, in the machineries, there is a problem in efficiency. So that means the company machineries may be all or not in the usable condition and there are certain improvements are needed. So when you look at this question itself, you may feel that there is a risk involved. There is a risk involved. What is that risk? The risk is machineries are not in a good condition. The machineries are not in a good condition. Machineries are not good in a condition mean, not in a good condition mean, it is a risk. That is the most of you think answer. The machinery is not in a good condition, it is a risk. Why? The risk means that the company will not be able to cater to the customer demand. The company will not be able to manufacture or produce the quantities in a more cost effective manner. The companies will not be able to achieve the profit target. Yes, those are risks. Those are risks. Those are the risks that you identify from this case scenario. Either answer is correct. Read the question. Identify the audit risk in this scenario. Identify the audit risk in this scenario. Highlight the word audit. 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 So therefore remember, in the risk assessment, right, the risk categorization, there are two types of risk coming to the place. One is, right, there are two types of risk. One is business risk. Other one is audit risk. Remember this difference. The difference between the business risk and the audit risk. So, this machineries, the efficiency is not there, company's profit cannot be achieved, the company's quantity required by the suppliers or customers cannot be manufactured. All these are not business, not audit risk, those are business matters. Those are nothing to deal with the auditor. Those are to deal with the company directors or a CEO or the managing director or whoever those charged with governance. Those are business problem. Remember this classification carefully. What the answers you found all are business risk, but the question is to identify the audit risk. What is the difference between the business risk and the audit risk? The business risk means certain bottlenecks or a certain barriers which could create certain issues in achieving the business goal. That is called business risk, right? That is CEO's angle, the CEO's problem. So business organization, a good example these days, COVID-19 impact on the tourism sector, it is not audit risk, it is business risk, right? If the product quality issue, now recently there was a Samsung phone, there was a quality issue came. The quality issue is not audit risk, it is a business risk. If the customers are complaining on your products, it is not a audit risk, it is a business risk. So if you can't supply the goods on time to the suppliers, it is a business risk. If your company is located, shall we say, your company is, let's say like this, your company is in Colombo city limit, these days the Colombo city limit is isolated, it is a business risk, nothing about the audit risk. Then what is this audit risk? Look here, audit risk means auditor does not look at the entire business. Auditor's objective is not to state that the business is free from misstatement. විගණකවරයාගේ අරමුණ මේ ව්‍යාපාරය මත මතයක් ලබා දීම නෙවෙයි. විගණකවරයාගේ අරමුණ මේ ව්‍යාපාරය පෙනෙන තාක්කල් පවතී නැත්නම් මේ ව්‍යාපාරය ආයෝජන සඳහා සුදුසු ව්‍යාපාරයක් බව තහවුරු කිරීම නෙවෙයි. විගණකවරයාගේ අරමුණ මොකද්ද? මේ විගණකවරයාගේ අරමුණ කළමනාකරණය විසින් පිළිල කරද මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශන කට්ටලයේ ප්‍රමාණාත්මක සාවද්‍ය ප්‍රකාශනයන්ගෙන් තොරයි. The finance statement prepared by the management are free from material misstatement. So therefore, our business, our focus as auditor doesn't go beyond the finance statement. Our focus as auditor is limited with the finance statement. So therefore, our role is not to give an opinion on the business. Our role is to give an opinion on the finance statement, whether such finance statement are prepared in accordance with the Sri Lanka accounting standards. So therefore remember, in this scenario, efficiency of the machineries is not at all to talk about the audit risk. So now look at here again in the presentation, right? So now rethink in this presentation to see whether this particular scenario could create a non-compliance with the Sri Lanka accounting standards, right? You have to see whether this scenario could create a non-compliance with the Sri Lanka accounting standards, right? So in that circumstances, having kept in that mind, just read again. XYZ who has significant plant and machinery which it used to make its product. During the year, the efficiency of the company's machinery was improved significantly. This was because a comprehensive review of each piece of machinery was undertaken and an assessment was made as to whether the minor repair, extensive refurbishment or a complete replacement was needed. XYZ then took the appropriate action in each case and spent a total of rupees 150 million in doing so. You see here, there is a production issue, that is a business risk. That is a business risk, right? What is audit risk? What is the issue here with regard to the financial statement? What is the issue here to non-compliance with Sri Lanka accounting standard in preparing the finance statement? Obviously, that you know, LKS 16. So if you see here, LKS 16 it says that now 150 million they have incurred on a minor repair, extensive refurbishment or complete replacement. You know, LKS 16, the property, plant and equipment, and all these expenses, you have to be carefully classify whether it should be charged to the P&L or income statement for the year it incurred, or it can be capitalized under the property, plant and equipment if those criteria given in the standard is satisfied. Then that can be carried forward and then depreciated over the period of useful lifetime. So that decision has to be taken carefully, either to be charged to P&L or to be capitalized. So this area could go wrong by the management. So this area could go wrong by the management. We don't say exactly will go wrong. This area could go wrong because they have incurred 150 million worth of money in doing this activity. You see, as an auditor, you believe that does it mean that this is wrong? අපි හිතනවාද මේක වැරදි කියලා? එහෙම කියන්න බෑ. මේක වැරදි කියලා කියන්න බෑ. You can't say like that. But you make some judgment, there is a risk involved. There is a probability that could go wrong. The probability that could go wrong is called as audit risk, right? So in this particular scenario, I hope that you are clear now. The audit risk assessment means the auditor identify the areas where there could be misstatement. The auditor identified areas in the finance statement where there could be problems. That is called risk assessment. The areas where there could be problems or a non-compliance with the Sri Lanka accounting standards are called risk assessment. Identification process is called as risk assessment. I hope that you are clear. So please carefully understand, the business risk and audit risk is a two different thing. The business risk has to be looked at the business angle. Audit risk has to be looked at the auditor's finance statement non-compliance of Sri Lanka accounting standard is concerned, right? So in this particular example, if you see, right, so production efficiency is the business risk. Audit risk is what? non-compliance with capitalization. You see, non-compliance with the capitalization. So another example I will take you. So we will say some product quality issue. So when there are product quality issues, right, it is a business risk. When you are selling some goods to the customers, those are production quality, there are some damaged products, something like that. So then the customers will complain. So that is not audit risk, but audit risk is something else. When there are product quality issues, obviously there is a problem in inventory. What is that problem? So this is not easy. This is not easy area. Please carefully listen. Right? When there is a product quality issue, there could be a problem of inventory. Why? We say that in LCS 2 at the year end, you have to measure or you have to recognize, you have to value the inventory's cost to NR, whichever is lower. So if there are product quality issues that the item being sold as of now, so sometimes these items will not be purchased by the customers in future. So therefore, the quantities produced will not be able to make sale. So the inventory is going to be issue. When there are product quality issues, customers will file legal cases against us for us to make compensation for a warranty. So again, the warranty is going to be a problem. So likewise, so this I told you only two example warranty, right? So I told you only two example. Likewise, so I will tell you another one. COVID-19. COVID-19 is not a audit risk. COVID-19 is a business risk. So what would be the effect on the finance statement on that? What would be the effect on the finance statement is called audit risk. Example, with the COVID-19, there could be issues of debtors recovery, right? There could be effect on debtors. There can be a problem of going concern, which will be discussed later. And there could be so many other problems can come up because of COVID-19. Revenue cut off, likewise, there are a lot of problems. Right, there could be a lot of problems. So you see, all these incidents are business matters. On these business matters, there is another side, how that business matter is going to affect to the finance statement. That is called audit risk. So therefore, in your examination on BL5, if there is a question with regard to the audit risk, remember that auditor look at only on the finance statement. We don't look at the other thing, we look at only on the finance statement. So we look at, as auditor, look at whether such finance statements are prepared in accordance with the Sri Lanka accounting standard. That is our role. So when we are checking that role, we are very narrow bounded. Auditors, remember, auditors are very narrow bounded to the finance statement. We don't check anything beyond that. Always, auditor need to look at what the business risk in the business, that is part of the business. But then those business risks are not audit risks. Those business risks you have to look at what is the impact of the finance statement. So therefore, whenever you are going to the examination regarding the audit risk, you have to memorize. You have to remember now. Save in your mind like concrete level. If I am the auditor, I will look at only on finance statement. I may not look at beyond anything. My focus is only to the finance statement, whether such finance statement are prepared in accordance with the Sri Lanka accounting standard. That is my objective. So don't go beyond our objective in addressing your question at the examination, right? I hope that you are clear with these two, business risk and audit risk, right? So then this audit risk, so another theory, right? This is another theory which you shall remember. So this is another theory come into place. So this theory is, this audit risk is categorized into two. This is a theory. Sometimes you may not be able to logically understand what is this theory, even a corporate level, sometimes strategic level even may not understand what is this logic. So, but try to remember this audit risk. Now you know the difference between the business risk and the audit risk. The audit risk has a two things. One is risk of material misstatement and detection risk. Right? The risk of material misstatement has a two things: inherent risk, right, and control risk. Inherent risk, control risk, right? In simply we say, in short form we say MMR, right? And we call DR. This is a theory, and we call IR, and this called CR, right? And if I summarize this one, look at here, right? So we call audit risk equal MMR plus DR, right? And simply we say otherwise audit risk equal inherent risk IR, control risk CR plus DR, detection risk. So remember that if there is a question in the examination, I told you the practical scenario of the business risk and the audit risk. So you have to remember the audit risk comprise three type of things. Audit risk comprise three risk. What is number one? If you look at here, audit risk mainly has a two thing: risk of material misstatement and the detection risk. The risk of material misstatements are further divided into two: inherent risk and the control risk, right? And if you look at the all three together coming under the audit risk, so therefore audit risk equal inherent risk, ආවේනික අවදානම, control risk, පාලන අවදානම, detection risk, අනාවරණ අවදානම. විගණන අවදානම කියන්නේ කොටස් තුනක එකතුවක්. ආවේනික අවදානම, පාලන අවදානම සහ අනාවරණ අවදානම. So while we are discussing the auditing in detail of the next webinars, you may understand what it is, but I will give you a basic understanding, but difficult to understand, but try to understand if possible. What is this inherent risk, control risk and detection risk? I will give you one or two example for you just to remember. You have to be with a little bit a different mindset to understand this one like practical scenario, but try to understand through that example that I am going to give here. Then ayatma mulata enawa. So what is audit risk? The audit risk mean the problematic areas. The audit risk mean the areas there could be problem in the finance statement. The areas where there could be material misstatement in the finance statement that we believe or probability we estimate, that is called audit risk. So if you go to the definition, difficult, huh? So if you go to the definition of inherent risk, control risk and detection risk, right? So what is, there are in the business organization, in the finance statement, there are certain problems. There are certain problems which is inherited. Again, the සමහර දේවල් තියෙනවා අපි හැමෝටම සමහරලාට සමහර දේවල් අපේ ඉන්හෙරිටඩ් අංගය ඇතුලේ තියෙන්නේ. දැන් සමහර අය ඉන්න උදේ නැගිටින්න කිව්වොත් ජීවිතේේ නැගිටින්නේ නැහැ. නැගිටින්න බෑ. එලාම් තියෙනවා 5 5යි 1 5යි 2 5යි 3 5යි 5 5යි 20 6 6 එලාම් 20ක් විතර තියෙනවා හැමදාම. අන්තිමේට 10ට විතර හැරෙන්නේ. It is certain problems are inherited in our life. Similarly, certain things are inherited in the business organization which cannot be controlled, which cannot never ever be corrected, cannot be controlled. Whatever the controls that you put is not going to work out. Now you are putting the alarm is a control, but that doesn't work out. Why? It is an inherent problem in your body clock change. So similarly, the business organization, for example, let's say, now there are certain problem. Let's say, for remembering purpose, I am giving this example. So let's say there is a hotel located in, would say in near in the Goal, near beach. Now there is a risk of tsunami. The tsunami will come, and then entire area could get affected. Can it be controlled? Can it be controlled? You cannot control. You cannot control. You cannot control the tsunami. So likewise, similarly in the business organization, there are certain risks which cannot be controlled. It's their part and parcel of the business. For example, let's say if a company in the alcohol business, liquor company, the liquor company, there is a public pressure. Okay, don't use liquor. There is a public pressure. Can the company control that? No. It is part of the business nature. Eka business ekema part ekak. A business ekema nature ekatta kene ekak. So you cannot control. So that is called inherent risk. right? So I hope that you are clear with the inherent risk mean, but this is a very high end concept. The inherent risk mean which you cannot control, whatever the control that you are going to put, not going to work out. For example, if I am in a business of expanding a business, I am in expanding business, while I am expanding the business, I may go into the different business, I will get exposed to those different type of risk, which I cannot control certain thing by putting the internal controls. Therefore, inherent risk mean which is inherited in the business organization, which cannot be controlled. Good example is expanding a business, or a nature of the business. For another example is, let's say, in the motor vehicle importers companies. Now these days it's a part of the business is that the government will put any time the taxes. It's inherited. Can you control the government taxes? You cannot control. It is something not in your hand. So that is called inherent risk. Similarly, when you look at in the business organization auditing angle, when you look at in the companies, there could be a problem which cannot be controlled. So those always auditor need to look at when the audit is started. Auditor has to look at whether there can be problem like this. Inherent risk. Interest rate is going up. Inflation is going up. Interest rate is coming down. Exchange rate depreciation. Good example, exchange rate. Can you control? Now if the exchange control is depreciate, what's going to happen? If you are export company, you are really benefited. If you are an import company, you are going to disadvantage and you are going to down the operation. So in some cases, the financial statement could go wrong because you are into the export-import business because of external factor which you cannot control. There is going to be a problem. With that, there could be non-compliance with the financial statement. Right? I hope that you are clear. So note down some good example for inherent risk factors in changes of interest rate, changes of a foreign exchange rate, or changes or expanding a business activities or a government regulations. There are many. Right? Control risk. What is control risk? The control risk means there are risk factors in the business organization. You put internal controls of the business organization. Then now just take this similar very simple example. So you might have gone to the No Limit or House of Fashion, Passion Buck or CIB, Rich Look, all these. So let's say you might have gone for some of these the shopping complex, shopping centers, even out of Colombo or anywhere, different places you might have gone. So you take. So now you want to take a shirt, shall we say you want to take a shirt or you want to take another dress. So you take that and you come to the cashier. When you come to the cashier takes that item and they put in another magnitude item. පොඩ්ඩක් ගාලා මොකද්ද මන්ද ගාලා දානවා මෙහෙම බිමට. දැකලා තියෙනවද? ඊට පස්සේ තමයි ඒක barcode system එකට අල්ලන්නේ. Right? Why? What is that? So now we'll say another person wants to take one item without paying the money. He wants to take one item and slowly come out. So he takes one item and put it in the trouser and comes out. And near the door, there is a magnetic item. When you come out there, if that is not removed, there will be alarm come in. What is that? It's a control of the business organization to prevent frauds and errors. It's a fraud. It's a fraud. That person was trying to intentionally get out something from the business. So that is a fraud. To avoid the fraud, the management has put a control. What is that control? Nobody cannot take out for in the item itself. Some magnitude item is in place that cannot be removed by you. It can be removed only through that instrument which is near to the cashier. So what is that? It is a control. In the business. Not easy these things. So in the business organizations, there are so many controls. But whatever the controls are there in the business organization, our people know how to bypass. Right? There are a lot of control in the business organization. A good example, you may be some audit trainees or some audit or some working in some places or something like that. So how many of you have taken your university assignment or a chartered institute or your examination papers and all that through the office printer? අරන් තියනවද නැද්ද? ඉතින් නෑ කියලා කියයි. ඉතින් ඒ වුණාට you might have not taken or you sometime you may take in future. It has happened many. It's a fraud. because that you are using some property which is not belongs to you. I won't say it's a big fraud, but it is some type of fraud. Whatever the internal controls are there in the business organization, there are controls. But can you violate or not? You can violate and easily can do. So therefore, control risk mean even though the company has implemented so many control in the business organization, even though the management has taken a lot of control in the business organization, still the people can engage in the fraudulent activities, or the prevailing internal controls will not prevent, detect and correct misstatement that could arise in the finance statement. එමනම් risk control risk කියලා කියන්නේ යම් කිසි පාලනයක් යොදවලා තිබුණත් still there is a chance something can go wrong. දැන් මෙතනදී කියන්නේ inherent risk කියලා කියන්නේ සමහර කම්පැනි වල පාලනයන් දාලා ඒක පාලනය කරන්න බෑ. Anyway that is nature of the business. No control at all. මෙතනදී control දානවා. හැබැයි දැම්මට වෙන වංචාව වළක්වන්න බෑ. ඇයි ඒ control එකෙන් 10ක් දානකොට එකක් හරි ඒ control එක bypass කරනවා. Definitely. So that can be done, and that is happening in the business organization. So that is called control risk, right? So these two risks we'll discuss in detail at the practical side later. Inherent risk and the control risk are part of the business organization, which is risk of material misstatement. And the next one is a detection risk. So this is very nice detection risk. So detection risk means something like this, right? So now we are going to check the debtors of the finance statement in the debtors. So there are 1000 items. There are 1000 items, right? As an auditor, you cannot check the entire 1000 debtors because you don't have time to do and you don't have resources to do. So in such cases, auditor checks 50 debtors checks. Auditor checks 50 debtors and come to a conclusion that balance 950 is correct. Got the point? You are checking only 50, but you come to a conclusion that entire 1000 is correct. We call sampling. This is called niyadhikarane, sampling, right? So now detection risk mean you are come to a conclusion that, or a judgmental conclusion by checking 50 that 1000 is correct. Does it mean that there are no issues in the 950? අර 950 issues නැද්ද? එහෙම කියන්න පුළුවන්ද? එහෙම කියන්න බෑ. අපිට වෙන විකල්පයක් නැති නිසා අපි මේ 50 චෙක් කරලා කියනවා 1000 නැත්නම් අපි 100ක් චෙක් කරලා කියනවා මේ 1000 හරි කියලා. හැබැයි එකෙන් කියවෙන්නේ නැහැ අපිට 100ක තහවුරුවක් ගන්න බෑ අර balance 900 වල මොකුත් ප්‍රශ්නයක් නැහැ කියලා. It's called detection risk. The detection risk mean there is a possibility that there is something will not be detected or will not be able to detect through the auditor's procedures, right? So that is called detection risk, because auditor adapt the sample. Let's say like this, if the auditor check entire 1000, detection risk is 0. If the auditor check entire 1000, detection risk is 0. But you know, in auditing you cannot check 100%. So therefore always auditor continues with the detection risk. Always detection risk comes down when the sample size going up. When you are checking the sample 50, 100, 200, 300, 500, 800, your risk is coming down, right? The risk detection risk mean what? The probability that the auditor will not be able to identify the misstatement when actually exit in the finance statement. So I just gave you a very brief explanation for you for these three items: inherent risk, control risk and detection risk. Please try to go through the study text carefully. Sometimes you may not be able to understand certain level going through the study text. For that, just have a look, have an understanding in like this. Audit risk, what is meant by audit risk? The audit risk mean the probability that there could be some errors or a misstatement in the finance statement, or the areas where there could be problem, call audit risk. The areas where there could be problem, call audit risk. but that is limited to the finance statement, that is called audit risk. If you look at the business as a whole, that is called business risk. Don't get confused. So in this audit risk has a 3 item: inherent problem, there are certain things inherent in the business, there are certain things even though the company has a control, its controls are not properly implemented, still then there could be problems come up. And the third thing, whatever said and done, since auditor adopt the sampling methodology, 100% misstatement cannot be detected. So these are the 3 risks involved in the business organization when you are auditing a financial statement, right? All 3 are called business risk, not business risk, audit risk. Audit risk equal inherent risk, control risk and detection risk. But I'm very sure you would not understand these 3 things, because this is a high-end auditing concept. This is a little bit advanced auditing concept, because I don't want to hide anything for you. So I want to tell you the truth. So what I request you, this is difficult. If somebody say this is easy, for you it's so difficult, some of you will think, what is this auditing? Please, this may be a 2 hours video, 3 times. Watch this into the 3 times. Try to pick in your mind, what is this risk? And what type of thing, and read the study text 5 times. Watch this video 3 times, read the study text 5 times, and go and do all the revision quick question. I am sure that you can answer, right? But just listening to this video 1 time and just reading the study text 1 time, you will get only the 25% of the knowledge that is applicable for BL5, because this is not easy, right? I hope that you are clear with that, right? So then there is one more thing that we have to learn, right? That is, when there is a risk assessment, how to do that one, how the risk assessment should be done. Right? So now the risk assessment, the risk classification we learn. Now how the risk assessment should be done? The risk assessment should be done through these procedures, right? Number 1, inquiry. අපි ගිහලා අහනවා මැනේජ්මන්ට් එකෙන්, මොනවද මේ අවුරුද්දේ තියෙන රිස්ක්, මොනවද බිස්නස් එකට තියෙන challenges, මොනවද ඔයාලා මේ අවුරුද්දේ හම්බෙච්ච ප්‍රශ්න. So we just ask from them, inquiry from management. And number 2, observation, right? Inspection and analytical procedures. What is that? There are 4 things that we do to identify the problematic areas. To identify the problematic areas called audit risk assessment. To identify the problematic cases, we do 4 things. Remember this 4 things, right? Memorize way. කටපාඩම් කරගන්න ඕනේ මේක. මොකක්ද අතර? Number 1, inquiry. What is that? Inquiry. Observation. Inspection. Then analytical procedures. What is that analytical procedures? මොකක්ද ඒ? Analytical procedures mean when the auditor look at in an analytical way. Right? For example, when you look at the financial statement, 2019 finance statement, 2018 finance statement, we look at the GP ratio, gross profit ratio. Last time 12%, last time 22%, this time 12%. It has come down. You see? Now auditor makes suspicious mind. Auditor has a last session we discussed professional skepticism. As an auditor, I look at something wrong somewhere. I am not going to say that the GP is wrong. I don't have evidence to say like that. But my mind goes to something like a doubtful scenario. This calculation of this type of ratio, we call current asset ratio, quick asset ratio, inventory turnover ratio, GP ratio, NP ratio, leverage gearing ratio. There can be return on capital ratio that you have learnt in A level, so many ratios. Sometimes we can compute into the finance statement for 2 different years, or looking at the competitors financial statement or industry some certain figures, you can compare and see whether there is an abnormality. Whether there is an abnormality in the financial statement that are audited by me. If there is an abnormality, that indicates something wrong somewhere. That doesn't mean something wrong, but that indicates something wrong somewhere. That is called audit risk, right? So therefore, Last thing is analytical procedures, that the analytical procedures are conducted or are performed by the auditors by calculating the ratios and looking at the differences of the figures with compared to previous year, and those so many accounting ratios that you did in your accounting, all those are computed by the auditors, and in order to identify abnormalities, right? Abnormalities mean what? It's a risk assessment. Identifying abnormalities is a risk assessment, right? Hope that you are clear. So these are the 4 procedures that the auditor should do to identify risk assessment. You tell with me again what are 4 procedures. Number 1, inquiry. Number 2, observation. Number 3, inspection. Number 4, analytical procedures. Please remember these 4. Don't forget, right? So now just look at here. Now we have been discussing up to now in a little bit of difficult auditing, not interesting. මේක ලස්සන නැහැ කියන තරම් ලස්සනත් නැහැ කියන තරම් ලේසිත් නැහැ. හරි. So you need to watch this one again and again. So if you look at what we have been discussing with the auditor's objective is to come and check the finance statement and to give a report to the shareholders. In doing that, you have to apply the Sri Lanka auditing standards. In applying the auditing standard, the main first activity is the agreeing terms. Both parties need to agree on a terms. Then we are coming to the main key task, that is planning. I told you under the planning there are 3 steps. 3 steps. Number 1, understanding the business or entity and its environments. So we discuss what, how and why. So how that is going to be worked out in understanding the business. Then I came to the risk assessment. In this risk assessment, so I discuss how the risk assessment is to be done, and the risk assessment basically categorization of risk assessment, and I discuss with you a practical example, how practically you think, in a practical scenario, how we are going to think with whether this is a business risk or audit risk, and after that we learn a theory, so how the audit risk classification is coming. So this understanding is not easy, so please go back to the study text and read and read and read. I told you 3 times to watch this video and 5 times to read the study text. If you do this, you will understand proper way, right? The third step that I am coming to discuss is right, deciding risk response, or we call nature, timing and extent of audit procedures. So look at there, right? Look at here. Now I told you there are 3 steps in audit planning. What is that? Number 1, you need to understand the business entity on which you are going to give an opinion to the shareholders. Then you identify the problematic areas, because since you can't check the 100%, you are going to understand or identify problematic cases. The identification of problematic cases is called risk assessment. How it is done in the practically you know, and the theory also you know, and how it is to be done also you know. Now we are coming to the third step. Okay, you got the understanding of the business, you identify the problematic cases. Then we identify kala nikan indada. After you identify the problematic cases, you have to do something. In auditing, we say you identify the problematic areas or abnormal areas, or you expect certain problem in this particular area, so you have identified those things. After that, you have to perform certain activities. That means you have to check something to ensure that whether there are material misstatement or not. You have to check that. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි හිතමුකෝ පොඩි problematic areas ටික අපි ආයෙත් දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට COVID-19 අපි කියමු මෝදර නැත්නම් මටක් කුලිය, let's say the Modera, you have identified Modera as an area. There could be more cases. You do a risk assessment and you identify. It was then you have to plan what you are going to do. Okay, Modera 500 people are there, oh sorry, 50,000 people are there. In this 50,000, we are going to check this in this manner. Or out of 50,000, we are going to check one person from home. Each home we are going to check one person. Something like that, you have to plan the work. So similarly, when the auditor identify the problematic places or problematic areas in the finance management, let's say the revenue. So if you have identified the revenue as a problematic area, now you have to plan the work. How you are going to check the revenue? You can't check the 100% revenue. You have to check something to get satisfaction, to get a conclusion whether revenue contains material misstatement or revenue does not contain the material misstatement. දෙකයිනේ conclusion තියෙන්නේ. එක්ක revenue එකේ misstatement තියෙනවා, එක්ක revenue එකේ misstatement නැහැ. ඔය දෙකෙන් මොකකට conclusion එක එන්නත් ඔයාට sufficient appropriate audit evidence ඕනේ. ඒකට මොන හරි කරන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කරන එකට අපි කියනවා audit procedures කියලා. Whether to come to a conclusion whether the revenue contains material misstatement or revenue does not contain material misstatement, you have to do something. That something to do is called as audit procedures. එහෙම නැත්නම් audit procedures කියලා කියනවා, risk response කියලා කියනවා, procedures කියලා කියනවා. You can call any word, but in simple meaning is what you are going to do to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence to state to come to a conclusion that particular area does not not contain misstatement, right? So now third step is not doing the work, not checking the work, right? This stage we are planning, so we are deciding. So this stage we are only deciding, and the later only we are going to check on that, so that we will be discussing on the next webinar under the audit procedures, right? So how to check the inventory, how to check the debtors, how to check the creditors, how to check the deferred tax, how to check the income, expenses or disclosures, how those practically can be done, we will discuss in the next session. But in this session, you need to understand theory part of that, deciding a risk response, right? This is another theory like a classification, remember this, right? So in this classification, risk response basically we categorize into two. So it's difficult to write here, but I will write in a small font, right? One is we call overall response. One is called, so look at here, overall response. I hope that you can see here, Suraj. So one is overall response, other one is called assertion level response. What is that? The auditor can do the audit procedures in a two level. That is another big theory that you need to understand, right? So that I will explain here in a simple way. If you look at in the finance statement, so look at here, under the finance statement, so there can be statement of comprehensive income, statement of financial position, statement of cash flow, statement of equity statement, so we will say equity statement and the notes, right. So this is called finance statement. This finance statement basically auditors look at into two different level. One is auditor look at there are certain issues can be there impact into the entire finance statement. There are certain issues auditor thinks that could affect to the entire finance statements. Right. The certain things auditor believe that now in under the statement of financial position there is a something called inventory. There can be certain problem only with the inventory, right. There are two things. There are certain problem could be there in the entire finance statement, that is called overall response. There are certain issues which are at the entire finance statement. For example, is a going concern. These are big theories, going concern. So that is called overall response, right. In an overall finance statement, what you can do? There is another thing called how this under this finance statement there is a something called inventory. There can be some issues at the inventory. Then if there is a inventory level issues, now remember the new word is coming for you, assertion. Assertion. Right. Assertions, I don't know how to tell in Sinhala this one also, assertion. But assertion is a big theory, so I am not going to explain in this video, I am going to explain with that with the audit procedures, right. But for the moment, you just remember this one to move to the next webinar, otherwise you don't have a link properly. So assertion mean, now there are two levels that the auditor look at, overall response and the assertion level response. Overall response mean there are certain issues which are happening at the entire finance statement situation. There are certain issues happening at the each line item level. Inventory, debtors, creditors, deferred tax, gratuity, income, expenses, payroll, disclosures. So each line item situation. that for the moment, remember, if there is something happening at each line item, it's called assertion level, but that is not the exact definition of assertion. So assertion means this inventory is further divided into subcomponent. That I will explain later, because that now you will get confused otherwise. For the moment, you just remember. So auditor's response or audit procedures basically divide into two: overall response and the assertion level response. The overall response means as an entire finance statement you are going to do something. Assertion level response means you are going to do, there are certain issues at the inside line item. In that level you are going to do something, right? What is assertion is a nice theory, it's a fantastic topic. So we'll discuss with the audit procedures that those are advanced theories that you should remember, right? So now in this overall response example, you can remember the example for overall response is, right, when you are planning the audit, if there is a problem at the entire finance statement, what you can do? මේ ෆයිනාන්ස් ස්ටේට්මන්ට් එක සමස්තයක් විදිහට මොකක් හරි ලොකු ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා නම් මොනවද කරන්න පුළුවන්? ඉතින් එහෙමනම් අපි දාන්න මේ ඉන්වෙන්ටරි වලට උත්තර හොයන්න යන්න එපා, ඩෙටර්ස් වලට උත්තර හොයන්න යන්න එපා, ක්‍රෙඩිටර්ස් වලට උත්තර හොයන්න යන්න එපා. ෆයිනාන්ස් ස්ටේට්මන්ට් එකේ හැමතැනම නම් ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා නම් එහෙනම් හොඳ ටීම් එකක් දාන්න, right? So one response is assigning a good team, assigning an experienced team members. Right, that's one example. You can see there are few in the study text. So overall response mean මූල්‍ය ප්‍රකාශන වලට සමස්තයක් විදිහට බලපාන ප්‍රශ්න වලට ඔඩිටර් ගන්න පුළුවන් ක්‍රියාමාර්ග මොනවද? එකක් තමයි experience කට්ටිය දාන්න, professional skepticism එක වැඩි කරන්න, supervisory role එක වැඩි කරන්න. So මේවා සමස්තයක් විදිහට මේ එක line item එක දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට මේ entire team එකටම හොඳ experience කට්ටිය දාන එක inventory debtors creditors කියලා වෙන වෙනම බලපාන්නේ නැහැ. සමස්තයක් විදිහට බලපානවා. එතකොට ප්‍රොෆෙෂනල් ස්කෙප්ටිනිසම් එක වැඩි කරන එක මේ තනිතරි ලයින් අයිටම් එකකට බලපාන්නේ නැහැ, සමස්තයක් විදිහට බලපානවා, right? I hope that you are clear with that, right? And the assertion level response, this is a theory, this is exactly theory. An assertion level response basically divide into two. So this is a theory, I will delete this one, this side, right? So this is divide into two. One is called test of control. This is a theory, remember, test of control, TOC, right? And then substantive procedures, right? Substantive procedures are further divided into two: substantive analytical procedures and test of detail. I put in a short form because I can't write there. So what is theory? Auditor's procedures divided into two. Auditor's procedures divided into two: overall response and assertion level response. Right? Overall response, assertion level response. This assertion level response is divided into two: test of control and substantive procedures. Substantive procedures are further divided into two: substantive analytical procedures and test of detail. Substantive analytical procedures and test of detail. Now, so this audit procedure side we will be discussing with the next webinar. So basically that is under the audit procedures, but I will just give you a brief introduction to this. What is test of control? What is substantive procedures? අපි මේකට කියනවා සිංහලෙන් තාවුරු පරීක්ෂා සහ පාලන පරීක්ෂා. විගණකවරයෙක්ට assertion level එකේ තියෙන සමහර දේවල් පරීක්ෂා කරන්න සිදු කළ හැකි විගණන ක්‍රියාපටිපාටි වර්ග දෙකයි පාලන පරීක්ෂා තහවුරු පරීක්ෂා. So what is substantive procedures? Substantive procedures mean, keep understanding like this: auditor himself or herself goes and checks certain thing. For example, if there is a land, auditor get the land deed and auditor checks, right? If there is a motor vehicle, auditor take the motor vehicle registration certificate and check. If there is a bank balance, auditor takes the bank confirmation and checked, right? So that is called substantive procedures, right? That means auditor try to get some more comfort. Auditor try to get more comfort by performing the audit procedure auditor itself, right? So that is called substantive procedures. Good example is checking the land deed, checking the motor vehicle registration certificate, checking the subsequent settlement of a data, checking the bank statement, bank confirmation, deferred tax computation, income tax computation, revenue invoices, payment vouchers, vouching. Doing all these activities called substantive procedures. We will discuss in the next webinar in detail. But what is the test of control? The test of control means, take it up like a food city sale. In a food city, if you take the food city, if you are in a process of verifying the food city sale, if you are performing the substantive procedures, you have to check the revenue invoice. නිකන් හිතන්නකො ෆුඩ් සිටි එක අවුට්ලට් තියෙනවා 200 ගානක් 300 ගානක්. එක අවුට්ලට් එක දවසක කොච්චර සේල්ස් ඉන්වොයිස් ගානක් දානවද? කොච්චර කස්ටමර්ස් ප්‍රමාණයක් ඉන්නවද? අපි හිතමු කස්ටමර්ස්ලා 5000ක් එනවා කියලා. ඔය 5000 වැඩි කරන්නකො 200 ගානෙන් 500 200 300ක් කියනවනේ. දවසකට ඕක වැඩි කරන්නකො 365න්ම ඇරලානේ ෆුඩ් සිටි. නිකන් හිතන්නකො ඔඩිටර් කෙනෙක්ට චෙක් කරන්න ඕන නම් ෆුඩ් සිටි එකේ සේල්ස් ඔඩිටර් ගිහලා සබ්ස්ටැන්ටිව් චෙක් කරන්න ගියොත් එහෙම අවුරුදු 20ක් විතර ඔඩිටර් සේල්ස් චෙක් කරන්න වෙයි. It's not practical. It's not practical. So therefore what auditor does, auditor adopt another thing called test of control. Test of control, testing of control. What is that? Test of control, testing of control. So what auditor does? අර අනුන්ගේ පහනෙන් එළිය බලන පොඩි සීන් එකක් තියෙනවා. So what auditor does? Auditor බලනවා මේ management එක මේ අපිට ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙන්න කලින් මේක මැනේජ්මන්ට් එකේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් නේ. මේ මැනේජ්මන්ට් එක හොඳ මෙකැනිසම් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවද? හොඳ කන්ට්‍රෝල් එකක් දාලා තියෙනවද? බාර්කෝඩ් සිස්ටම් එක දාලා තියෙනවද? සිකියුරිටි සිස්ටම් එකක් තියෙනවද? CCTV තියෙනවද? රිකන්සිලියේෂන් හදනවද? සල්ලි හරියට බෑන්ක් කරනවද? Auditor look at all these things. Those are called control of the business organization. Auditors look at the control of the business organization. And look here, the controls are satisfied. So therefore auditor thinks no need to check one by one. Since the management has adequate control or appropriate control, auditor perform test of control, whether those controls are implemented properly, whether those controls are designed and implemented properly. That the things auditor is going to check. That is called test of control. So I just gave you a brief understanding, but I am going to discuss with you again at the next webinar on the assertion level audit procedures. We will discuss in detail in that webinar. So test of control and the substantive procedures. Test of control means testing of the client control. Substantive procedures mean auditor goes and auditor checks the certain evidences to satisfy himself. It takes more time. So this is taking more time, this is taking a less time. But more reliable evidence, sufficient evidence, appropriate evidences are coming on the substantive procedure angle, but we will discuss. That is, I just want to give you on a theory side, we will discuss under the next webinar, right? So this is what I want to discuss under this chapter, right? So, and also another one more thing, just remember, when auditor identify the audit risk, auditor is not going to check all the risk. Out of that also auditor identifies significant risk, because nowhere auditor gives a 100% assurance. Auditor gives a reasonable assurance. So therefore, it is not required to auditor to check 100% item. Similarly, it is not required the auditor to check all the risk item also. Out of that, auditor identifies the significant risk and deciding the audit procedures and performing. So this audit procedure side we will discuss under the next webinar. But I wanted to tell you today, this is a bit difficult. Even at this are done at the audit manager partner level in the audit firm. Just audit trainee, or you have not gone to the audit firm, you will not understand unless please watch back at least 3 times this video. So whenever you have a free time, just watch this again and again and look at the study text. Try to understand what I was trying to finally at the outset, what I was trying to say. Auditor cannot check 100%. So therefore auditor identify the problematic areas, and that problematic areas identification is done under the risk assessment, and then you decide to satisfy, you decide certain works to be decided, certain works to be done to get a comfort of the with the satisfaction whether there are material misstatement or not. So under that there are 3 steps: understanding, risk assessment and deciding audit procedures. So this summary, theoretical summary, please take a note or take a screenshot and take your own paper and put a short note and take the study text, read and prepare your own short note. Please try to understand the logic. It will be easy for you to the next 2 to 3 webinars on audit procedures, and also to write any of the questions that are coming in your BL5 paper, and not only that, for a CL1 Advanced Audit and Assurance paper as well. Right? We will just quickly look at one or two questions that are coming in the examination. After that, we can discuss some of the further questions during our revision discussions. But what I request is chapter number 12, please read in the study text. Basically, other than the risk assessment, there is another chapter called audit materiality. So, but I don't know whether we will get a time to discuss the audit materiality. Let's see on the next webinar. But read that complete chapter and try to understand. Right. So, if you look at the question discussion here, so the first question, now you can answer this question, very simple. The procedures that help the auditor to understand the entity and determine the key areas most susceptible to material misstatement during the audit is known as උඩ බලාගෙන දැන් ලියන්න පුළුවන් වාට මේ තියරි එක අදහන් හිටියා නම් උඩ බලාගෙන ලියන්න පුළුවන් මොකක්ද උත්තරේ? Answer C, risk assessment procedures. Read the question again. The procedure that help the auditor to understand the entity and determine the key areas most susceptible to material misstatement during the audit is, it can't be substantive procedures, it can't be substantive analytical procedures, it can't be audit planning procedures. Nowhere I told you the audit planning procedures in this diagram. I told you the risk assessment procedures and the further audit procedures under the diagram. So therefore answer C. Then pilot paper question number 33. You are in the process of planning the audit of Taru PLC. This is the first year your firm is auditing the Taru PLC. As a result, there is a lack of cumulative audit knowledge and experience, increase in the detection risk. What we learn. Which of the following is an appropriate auditor's response to address the risk of this risk described? Just now I told you, if there is a detection risk, what you need to do? Look at here. Extended controls testing should be performed. Support of independent experts should be obtained to get better understanding about Taru PLC. More time and resources will need to be devoted to obtain understanding of Taru PLC at the start of the audit. Increase substantive test. You look at here, මේක දිහා බලන්න හොඳට මේ question එක. මේකයි මම කියන්නේ මේ අපි auditing chapters වලදී we need to have a proper understanding of the theory rather just memorizing. So if you memorize the theory, you can't write this question. But if you listen to me carefully during these 2 hours, you will be able to guess the answer. Read the question again. You are in the process of planning the audit of Taru PLC. This is the first year firm in auditing a Taru PLC. As a result, there is a lack of cumulative audit knowledge and experience, increasing detection risk. Lack of cumulative audit knowledge, because you are the first time you are going to do this audit, you don't know anything, so therefore you need to have a better understanding. You don't know the previous years what has happened. Which of the following is an appropriate auditor's response? Number 1, extended control testing, that is not the appropriate answer. Support of independent expert should be obtained. Answer C. More time and resource will need to be devoted and to obtain an understanding of the Taru PLC at the start of the audit, because this is the first year audit. So because this is the very first year audit, you need to have a more resources and more time devoting at the beginning to understand all the background of the company and all the past incidents and all the stakeholders' requirements. There are a lot to understand. So therefore answer C, more time and resources will need to be devoted to obtain an understanding of the Taru PLC at the start of the audit. Then the pilot paper question number 34. Audit planning is an important element of the auditing process. Which of the following is not a purpose of planning an audit? So this is directly from the study text. Audit planning is an important element of the auditing process. Which of the following is not a purpose of planning an audit? Either you have a 2 option. One is you can memorize from the study text, which I don't like or I don't recommend. Secondly, you can think and write. If you listen to me carefully today, you can write this question. To ensure that appropriate team members are selected to carry out the audit, to organize and manage the audit in an efficient and effective manner, to ensure that the client obtains added value from the audit, to reduce the risk of giving an inappropriate audit opinion. There are 4 answers. Answer C. To ensure that the client obtains added value from the audit. Now look at here. So anywhere, whether auditor gives an opinion to the shareholder, but whether auditor giving a value addition to the client? No, we are not giving a value addition to the client. So we are giving only an opinion to the shareholder. So therefore answer C. The last question, revision kit. So I told you, once you read the study text, again you have to read the revision kit as well. The last question. So revision kit, there are so many questions from the audit planning. So I will be discussing under the revision webinar, but just look at those questions as well. Which of the following is an example of an inherent risk factor? So which I explained you through the morning alarm example. So which of the following is an example of an inherent risk factor? The companies are rapidly expanding. There is no log or password required to access the accounting system. The company does not maintain a non-current asset register to record its asset. No backups are taken of the computer system at the end of the each day. If you look at here, but if you memorize the theory of inherent risk, you will not be able to answer this question. But if you understand what I told you, inherent problem, you see answer B, there is no log or password required to access accounting system that can be controlled. What was the inherent risk definition? It cannot be controlled. Then part C, the company does not maintain an uncurrent register that can be controlled, we can introduce. No backups are taken, you can take up the backups. So therefore, answer B, C, D are not going to be the answer automatically. The company is rapidly expanding, which is out of our control. If you are exposed to a risky business or a risky business line or SBU, of course, you will get into a trouble which you cannot control, applying the internal control. So therefore, answer A. Right, so that's it on the most difficult chapter today which I wanted to discuss with you. So sometime when we are discussing auditing, sometime we don't like to discuss this chapter at the beginning, but always I believe that you have to learn in a very systematic way. You have to learn the auditing in a systematic way, how the practical auditors are practically doing an audit. So therefore, audit planning section is important one, even though it is difficult. So again, I am requesting you, please go back and read the study text 5 times, watch this webinar for 3 times, and do the revision kit questions, right? And do the pilot paper question. And still, if you have a concern on this complex topic, I am ready to help you at any time. So you just drop me an email or give me a WhatsApp message, send me a WhatsApp message. I'll try to explain you, because this, if you don't know this core of the auditing, the rest of the auditing is going to be difficult for you, right? But don't get confused or don't get fed up with this particular area. So make it an interest for you to learn this one and try to, now if you are interested, so what you can do is, there is a CL1 webinar on audit planning. This is more audit planning, this is a little advanced level, but once you watch this one, if you want to watch, go to the Sri Lanka YouTube channel, and there are CL1 webinar on the audit planning, just watch that also. But if you are not understood properly this one, don't go and don't get confused. But if you understood properly, if you need a further understanding, you can go in, but that is not applicable for your examination. You don't want to go into that level, because your examination is in a different level, basic understanding. Sometimes certain thing which I explained to you today beyond your examination, because if in your examination is concerned, sometimes you can remember this theory and memorize and can write as well, but I wanted you to give a proper background in auditing. So then it's a strong foundation for you to move forward in the rest of the subject, as well as in becoming a chartered accountant. Right. So let's meet in the next webinar with the audit procedures. Please, before watching the next webinar, so you have to complete at least 3 times of watching of this video. Thank you.